Hi everyone. We're still working on Unit 3, um, actually covering computing devices more in detail. We should understand the term of mobile devices and what they are. They have a large impact on our lives in a lot of different ways, just in our ability to communicate while on the move, okay, from anywhere. And then the ability nowadays to connect to the internet and so forth from the mobile device. In the world of business, they've allowed people to conduct business anywhere, but also have created the issue of security within business, especially if people are using their own personal devices. We have the bring your own device issue when somebody brings their device into a work environment and uses it, even if they're just using it to read their mail. And we'll talk more about that later on in later units in the security and the information systems unit. Types of mobile devices, smartphones, watches that can communicate with your smartphone. Tablets, I'm doing the work right here on an iPad, but there are other type of tablets. Different devices for reading books. Kindle, I have a Kindle. Netbooks were popular for a while, but have not increased in their popularity. The idea was to build a small laptop, a really limited laptop that would allow you to connect to the internet and do some processing. What's changed here, they do make, for example, they make something called Chromebook, and I wouldn't call that a netbook because a Chromebook is really simplistic. It's designed to connect to the internet and then use the cloud for almost all your resources, your apps and so forth. We've talked a little bit about that. And so you can buy Chromebooks for $200 or less, so you don't have a huge investment, but you still have something more like a laptop to do your computing rather than trying to do your computing on a tablet or your smartphone. Laptops are still popular. You can get laptops that are extremely powerful or fairly simple. The one I have in my home works great, and it's really simple. I got a good deal on it. It was refurbished. I think I paid $399 for it, and it does everything I needed to do at home, and then some. And there might be others. There's lots of other mobile devices, things that move around that use computing that you may not even know they're using computing. But our Garmin, we still have a Garmin, and when we program that, that's like a little computer. It's like a mobile device, and it communicates with a satellite and lets us know where we are. So I can start to think, man, there's lots of mobile devices that we're probably not even aware of that are working. Okay, let's move down to the next part of the list. Desktops and workstations, typically not mobile. You have a desktop computer. It says desktop, but it might be sitting under your desk or whatever. And depends on the power. You can get these to be very simple depending on what the use required of the desktop. If you're just doing word processing, browsing the internet, and so forth, maybe small graphics, you don't need a real powerful machine. Okay, but if you're doing something like gaming, use that as an example, you'll want a much more powerful desktop. Servers can be a desktop machine, but they have a purpose. They're going to serve clients. And so we get the term server-client environment. So a server could hold data, then it would be a data server. The server could hold apps, so it could be an application server, so you can get your data and use it, your client, or your client can get the app and use it. The server could be DNS, domain name services, so the client can use a domain name to get somewheres in the internet. A server could serve as a print server. It just allows lots of people to print to the same printer in an establishment or in a business, very common. There's DHCP servers, and servers can be used for backup, so they're going to serve the client, and they would range. They could be a fairly simple machine, depending on what they need to do, or a more complex machine, which we'll talk more about later on. Mini computers have been around for a long time. They're a whole step up from a PC. Okay, small business could use mini computers up to mid-range businesses. A mini computer might run a entire corporation. Okay, we have moved away from mini computers and clustered PCs if we need that power, but mini computers, faster processors probably not on a chip. It's probably a whole board of chips doing the processing. Mainframes is a huge step up from mini computers. There's a mainframes that was made in, actually an example. There's a mainframe made in Clear Lake years ago that actually runs Disney World in Florida. When Unisys used to be here in the area, they used to make mainframes, and a lot of the mainframes made at Unisys in Clear Lake went all over the world. A lot of them went to Japan and China and so forth. Supercomputers are computers that are used for calculating huge things like predicting the weather or simulating things that would be very hard to simulate. Number crunchers, okay? And there's still some supercomputers being created. Watson, the name of a computer that IBM created, is a supercomputer. And not a lot of them, but they're still used. Okay? Maximizing the usage of computing. We can cluster computers. You'll look that up and get the definition. Take lots of PCs, put them together to do a particular task. Some places, like some campuses, some college campuses, will allow people to come in and use their computers in the evening, cluster them together to do work in the evening when nobody's using it during the day. Grid computing, you'll compare that to cluster, very similar in what they're doing in terms of computing tasks. And then one thing I want to make sure we mention too, you can get one PC and then you can virtualize it. You could run different operating systems on the computer, like a virtual machine. So you can pay for one expensive piece of hardware, and then you can split that hardware up so it looks like different computers. For example, one piece of hardware could serve as a data server, an app server, maybe your DNS, print server, and you can run different OSs, different operating systems. So, in general, these two concepts we can take and group PCs together to do something. For example, when some movies are made, they'll cluster together lots of PCs, like Avatar. I think it was, or to create avatars or images of what look like people, but computer generated. They'll use clusters of computers to render those animations. Okay? And that's it.